Well, the Master is back, and he is dressed for the occasion. Welcome back to another Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama review. In today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at the second volume within the Master series featuring Eric Roberts as the Master. This release is available to order now on the official Big Finish website in both physical CD and digital download formats, as well as being able to be purchased as a part of a bundle alongside the original Master release. So let's take a look at how this box set pans out. So very much like Volume 1 within this series, we have 3 separate stories written by 3 separate writers. However, we have a plot arc which connects all of the stories together. If anything, Volume 2 is a lot more connected compared to that of Volume 1, as we have one location which is used throughout the entirety of the series, and that is basically this massive starship which is travelling throughout the time vortex. So episode 1 is Nemesis Express, as written by Robert Whitelock. Episode 2 is Capture the Chronovore, as written by Elizabeth Miles. And the concluding episode of the set is Passion, as written by Robert Valentine. And Robert Valentine is also the script editor for this box set, ensuring that the entire series, although written by 3 separate people, fits together really snugly into one big consistent story. The second series of Master opens with a story called Nemesis Express, which rather unusually adopts the lead title for this entire box set. This story is written by the lovely Robert Whitelock, who I mainly know from the superb The Robots spin-off series, which does of course follow the 8th Doctor companion of Livchenka on her home planet of Kaldor. This box set borrows a number of elements from the first box set, seeing the return naturally of Eric Roberts as the Master, but also Vienna Salvatore as played by Chase Masterson. For those of you who haven't listened to Volume 1, to be quite honest, you can listen to this box set having not experienced the previous set, because the vast majority of that box set has now kind of vanished from my memory. I certainly can't recall the vast majority of the plot points. There is that odd reference here and there to the original box set, as well as some of Vienna's previous stories, but other than those passing remarks, context-wise, you don't really need to know anything going into this set. This whole release is set on the Kairos, which is a very large ship travelling in the time vortex beyond laws and jurisdictions. The opening story allows us to hear from the lower classes within the ship as Vienna tracks down the character of Scarden as he possesses the heart of the Tiamat. For those of you who do not know who Vienna is, she is an ethical assassin, meaning she only kills people if she really has to. She's had a few releases with Big Finish over the years, and my first introduction to the character was in fact within the first volume of this series, and I think she is very different to what I normally expect from a Doctor Who universe story. She certainly introduces a new bold personality which I've never quite encountered within a Doctor Who story before, but in turn she definitely shapes this series into the identity that it has. Especially when she's paired alongside the Eric Roberts Master. The whole series definitely has a style which feels very different. And I think that can be both a good and bad thing. Volume 2 feels very consistent in style to what I remember from Volume 1, but at the same time, said style takes a while for me to get used to. This incarnation of the Master can be a little bit over the top, a little bit theatrical perhaps, but also the fact that he's possessing a person's body, clinging onto existence by a thread, gives the entire performance an otherworldly quality. He almost looks down on other life as completely meaningless, and he kind of acts like a god. I think it's also very useful having a writer like Whitelock opening the set, as he is simply so good at establishing where an episode is set. Again, this is something he does very well within the Robot spin-off series, and I like the way that this story works through the various compartments of the lower decks, through the rough sections from some of the clubby areas of the spaceship. It gives that whole sense of the environment being very dangerous. The theme of Vienna being chased by the ship's security also ties all 3 of the stories together. Little bit of a spoiler ahead as to how Volume 1 ends. It's not really too much of a spoiler, as I've kind of already mentioned it, and it's kind of pivotal, I think, to this incarnation. Basically, this master is back in a tricky situation, needing to rebuild once more, so he spends the bulk of this story trying to reform once again into a physical, kinetic presence. He's very ghostly within this episode, so we kind of get to see him slithering in and out the ship's inner workings in order to further his own scheme. I do like the way that he manipulates and uses people. He does it in a very slippery way, and because he's not within his own body, this allows him to basically get into the very heart of the ship, and it allows the listener to have a little bit more of understanding as to why the ship works how it does. In my mind, I was kind of visualising the serpent creature from the movie speaking with the Eric Roberts voice, which is in fact rather sinister, but again very visual, which is impressive for an audio drama. I think if you like Volume 1, then you will most certainly enjoy this set. For some reason, I do find that with the Eric Roberts Master stories, I need to give the episodes a little bit more attention and focus and concentration in order for me to follow the plot themes within my mind. I think that's because this incarnation does things a little bit more subtly. Episode 2 within this set, I think, is an important moment within the Eric Roberts Master series. I think it showcases the potential of this incarnation, as well as some delightfully evil moments. Elizabeth Miles pens capture the Chronivore, and I honestly think that she is a name that you need to watch out for with Big Finish. When listening to this story, I decided to have a little bit of a look online to see what other episodes that she's written, and I was incredibly surprised to see how small her list of contributions was, especially when you compare her to other Big Finish writers, because there wasn't particularly too many stories there. It just so happens that a lot of the stories that I've been complimenting over the past few months rather highly just so happen to be written by her, so the likes of the Outlaws within the First Doctor adventures with Stephen Noonan as the First Doctor, as well as most recently with Boundaries in the War Master series, both two incredibly strong stories, so I think that Elizabeth Miles is definitely one to watch out for. I think Elizabeth rather crucially has brought to the table some of that masterful nature seen within her War Master story, and being a very keen supporter of that spin-off, it was great to see such techniques being applied here. I think the thing with Elizabeth Miles' way of writing is she's made quite an impact for me as a listener very quickly and early on within her Big Finish career. She writes baddies incredibly well, and I thoroughly enjoyed hearing Eric Roberts simply being the baddie. It takes the series back to a more traditional Master story, which I think this is the perfect point within the series to do that. Hearing this Master get his hands dirty, simply causing a little bit of chaos, was a lot of fun. This story has an animal hunting theme. We are now moving up in the levels of the spaceship to be with the rich as they hunt creatures within the time vortex. One of which being the Chronivores from the Third Doctor story, The Time Monster. As well as looking pretty damn stunning on the cover, I do like the addition of them within this story. You really don't need to know the context of The Time Monster in order to enjoy this episode. In fact, The Time Monster is a story that I have never watched, however I have heard some interesting things, to say the least. The episode does have a few nice throwaway references in there as well, which as always is a lovely treat to listen to. And I think that it's very interesting getting something which happens on Earth, the likes of hunting animals, and then putting it in a very extreme setting, the likes of the time vortex. And then, of course, with some of the hunting party themselves being plucked off one by one, it does feel a little bit like an Agatha Christie murder mystery, but without the mystery, as it's pretty clear who is the evil person that's behind it all. It's just the case of proving so. I might be completely wrong, but I think Vienna is used a little bit as a plot device throughout Volume 1 and 2 of this series so far. She's kind of the protagonist, and we get introduced to this incarnation of the Master through her eyes. The relationship that she has with this Master is also very intriguing. It feels as if they almost enjoy being pitted against each other, as if they are almost made for each other. Perhaps Vienna also feels a little bit like a doctor, especially within this story, story. She's certainly in that doctory role because she has a companion, being Passion, who was introduced within the first story, and she is keen for her own revenge after the events of the previous episode. So I suppose in a way, both of our protagonists, I guess, we're somewhat meant to relate to in a kind of distant way, given that Vienna is of course an assassin, and not forgetting that key thing. I think that because they have a personal grudge against the Master, that's what makes this dynamic work. It's rather unusual, as so far the Eric Roberts Master series has relied a lot on Vienna to get the ball rolling. Even though this is technically his spin-off, they almost come as a little bit of a duo. This series has definitely tempted me to check out some of the earlier Vienna releases, as Chase is certainly one of the highlights of this set. I think that especially as the episode progresses, she kind of comes into the character really well. She's essentially the keystone of the plot's progression, but I do wonder how this series would work if Vienna wasn't present and simply the Eric Roberts Master was left alone to do his own thing. The unusual thing that I've realised with the Master spin-off series so far is that each episode gets bigger as the set goes on. And I say that as some series start big, lull slightly in the middle, and then come back for that big final story. I think the listening experience with the Eric Roberts Master series is much more gradual. By the end of the set, you become used to this variation of the Master. Eric Roberts is on top form, offering his best performance of the set, and then the series ends. This spin-off certainly shows a lot of promise, and I think that both releases so far have showcased some rather exciting moments, but all of those pieces aren't quite fitting together just yet. Robert Valentine concludes the set with Passion, and being the script editor too, I think that Robert does a great job of summarising this set's narrative well. It's clear that he understands the character dynamics and embraces them for the big final task of wrapping up these events. Much like episode 2, I think that this story sheds some superb light on the relationship between this incarnation of the Master and Vienna. Both Chase Masterson and Eric Roberts perform excellently alongside each other, as they both play with each other's minds. Both characters have shady pasts, and the Master uses that to his benefit. Drawing on these similarities also continues to present this Master at his most toying and evil, again playing to the strengths that we see within Elizabeth Miles' work within episode 2. Terry Ann Bob Baxter also sees her brightest hour within the set as Passion. I love her personal vendetta against the Master, and I think both her and Vienna are a great team. Lots of dramatic and action sequences of the story are brought to life through both of these characters, whilst the Master plays evilly in the background. This story also allows the protagonists to reach the top deck within the ship for the big final showdown. I do like the way that each story sees the characters kind of going up a deck within the spaceship, because it gives that impression of the plot moving forward. It's certainly a nice way to show that the story is progressing. It also makes the main characters feel like they are within a game. The Master is always one step ahead. He is at the very top of the ship in command, and they must move up the levels in order to win. One of the benefits of having a series finale that is so focused on the main protagonists, being Vienna, the Master, and Passion, I think it kind of made me like the characters more. Certainly at this point within the series, I feel like I've kind of got used to Vienna as a protagonist, and it's nice to be able to explore that dynamic again with her and the Master in a little bit more detail, but also I feel like this story perhaps is a little bit of a gateway into the future of this series moving forward, and it is very unusual having a Master spin-off where essentially the main protagonist isn't just the Master. I also like that Robert Valentine has decided to address the fact that this Master is clinging onto existence. We've previously seen him acting all ghostly within episode 1, and then within episode 2 he kind of has his full form once again, and then the third episode kind of plays with both techniques, having both ghostly and in physical form. I do like this because it is kind of the closest that this series has got to actually addressing the events of Doctor Who the movie from 1996, because other than that, The series has very much strayed from this initial Masters debut, and when I first seen that he was going to be getting a series on Big Finish, I must admit I was expecting something a little bit American in style, kind of American sci-fi, a little bit like a blockbuster, but in reality, I think so far this series has been very much focused on space travel and the assassin of Vienna, which is a very different take that I thought that this series was initially going to go down, and perhaps that is why I'm kind of so undecided about what I feel about this series generally. Personally, for me, I would definitely recommend viewing this box set as one big story rather than 3 individual adventures, because if you take a look at each story as an individual piece of drama, I don't think the episodes are as successful, and kind of a similar thing applies to Volume 1 within this series as well, where once you've listened to all 3 stories, you kind of, or at least I definitely do, get a bit more appreciation for the narrative overall, as opposed to viewing all of the episodes individually. Drawing a comparison to the War Master series featuring Derek Jacobi, I think Only the Good was simply such a strong start. It instantly created the spin-off's place from episode 1. Its identity is fully formed, and from there this has allowed the series to get even more creative and exciting. I think this series is still finding its feet, and that is completely okay. I'm feeling that there is definitely a progression with each volume, and I look forward to hearing where this series will go next. I just think it perhaps isn't finding its identity as quick as other Doctor Who spin-offs, and in the future perhaps maybe a box set on Earth in America might actually help this series blossom, but also at the same time I think at some point the series is going to need to have a bit of a change in style and see this Master doing things alone rather than having this unusual kind of duo style of storytelling with the Master and Vienna. So there we have it, that is my review of Master Volume 2. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on the Host Productions for regular Big Finish audio drama reviews, and who knows, I may take a look at the next box set in this series if Big Finish decide to do one. I don't believe there is anything announced for the future, but I'm sure they will be utilising Eric Roberts at some point again. So thank you very much for watching, have a nice day, and I shall see you all next time.